I'm with Andrew Grote. And how you doing?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me
I'm
on
good.
today.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. How's life been treating you? How's
Good.
work? How's family?
It's good. I'm very busy with work. You know, being an interim director at Steuben, out of nowhere, so that was kind of a life change for me for a little bit of chaotic for a bit, but we're getting the hang of that now, and family's good. Kids are really good, so can't complain.
Yeah, so what's that position entail?
So pretty much, I'm literally director for the time being of the whole department, doing day to day operations, doing the budget stuff, payroll, HR, whole 9 yards for running an apartment. It's kind of was thrown on me out of nowhere for a brief period of time.
How many people are you overseeing?
Right now, 34.
Wow, it's decent size.
Yeah, so we have roughly 20 full time, and the rest are part time.
What's your guys' run volume like?
Last year we were just over 3,500 runs. That's a little down from years past. So we're right around 4,000 usually. That's what we target is about 4,000 a year.
Very nice. So just kind of want to jump in. We chatted just for a brief minute of kind of about what we were going to talk about. Let's start off with where you grew up and how you got into public safety.
So grew up in Fort Wayne, Northern Indiana. I've been here my whole life. Kind of just really how I got into public safety. It's kind of just been in my family, my entire life. My great uncle was fire chief of Fort Wayne for many years, so I kind of grew up in the firehouse. Grew up in Station 7, over off of a Lindenwood for many years. Spent many years there with my great uncle and my dad, and just kind of just fell into line with that. Initially going through school and all that, I was playing hockey pretty regularly through high school. Played semi-pro hockey for a brief period of time. Got hurt, came back to Fort Wayne, and went to college. Was starting my um, starting my fire career at that point. Then Ivy Tech decided to kind of cancel out their or close out their fire program they were doing at the time. Jumped into EMS, and that rest is history.
So did you jump in as an EMT and then immediately go for your paramedic, or did
I
you work as an
No, so
EMT for a
I
little
went.
while?
I was one of the few that actually jumped right in. Got my EMT, got my advanced, and got my paramedic all within like 2.5, 3 years. So didn't really have much. Didn't have much street experience prior to jumping into paramedic. So I would not recommend that for most people. But for me, it kind of came naturally. I felt like so. I kind of just kept progressively going on with it, and got me to where I am so far.
I was talking to a buddy last night. He's an advanced EMT with Fort Wayne Fire, and we were chatting about kind of how the whole EMS program is laid out. You know, you got your EMT basic, you got your advanced EMT, and you got your paramedic. And it's starting to seem like the advanced EMT, I don't want to say it's fading away, but less people are going for their advanced than they ever have. You know,
Correct.
most people go, they go and get their EMT basic. They may work for a little while, or in a lot of cases, they just go straight from getting their basic to their paramedic. Do you have a lot of advanced EMTs within your organization?
So I have two full timers that are advanced, and then I have one part timer who also works for an Allen County department on his full time job. But most of the time, I'm not seeing many advanced coming up anymore. And I think what happened was when the state pulled the cardiology stuff away from them, it kind of took pulled cardiology and IVs and some medications away from them. Most of them just kind of felt they didn't have a spot anymore. So
And I almost wonder if the state is doing that on purpose. Like they want to phase out the advanced EMT, but National Registry still has it as a program, so they can't quite get rid of it. But I almost wonder if that's being done by design.
it's very possible.
I need to get somebody from the state on an episode and just ask them those
Start
questions.
questioning. Yeah,
Yeah, question why the test is the way that it is, and
yeah.
I think
I
I
just
need to
heard
do
it.
that.
I
I'm
just
gonna
had
make
one
a
of my
note.
employees just took the paramedic test and for National Registry. Didn't do so hot, but he said it was definitely a lot more difficult than he thought it was going to be.
And so don't get me wrong, paramedic test is difficult. I've taken it. I took it a couple times. I thought the paramedic program in general was easier than the advanced EMT program.
That's what I've heard. That's exactly what I've heard. People who have taken the test and all that and said, yeah, I can imagine.
It's mind-boggling to me, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So you went and you got your EMT, went and got your advanced EMT, then got your paramedic all within a couple years. Where were you working at?
So started out back then it was Whitley County EMS, then got bought out by Parkview. So then I spent the last 12 years, 13 years with Parkview in the Parkview system until 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, jumped over to Steuben and went back to the county service.
Nice. Do you prefer rural settings or do you prefer like more suburban type settings for EMS?
I like both, to be honest. I like both. When I was also working at with West Central for a while, it was nice to working in the city, getting the city runs. But being up like Steuben now, uh, where we have hour and a half, 2 hour transport times to a trauma center, to a big medical center, we are able to do more of our skills, be more what I would say is practice our paramedicine scope of practice, get to be with patients longer. So that's I enjoy that a lot more when I am on the truck.
So your protocols are probably more advanced than they were with the agency that I was with in the city. What what are some of the key differences between your department? Like what are you guys able to do that we couldn't do in the city? I'm assuming you have RSI.
Yeah, so that's honestly, so we are almost identical to regional Northeast Indiana regional protocols. So almost all that stuff is almost the same. Our biggest difference is going to be the RSI aspect of it. So with, we can do inductions with ketamine. We use ketamine as our primary, then rock to actually paralyze. So those are our two main differences. But again, most services around Northeast Indiana has switched over to those as well. So we're not too far off with our new medical director. We just received. We're looking at the benefits of potentially getting blood in the near future. We're seeing how the trial study goes, and they're a little deep dive into it. Then we'll kind of gauge that off of what they come up with and look at how it could be beneficial to us. We've had some discussions of, we do have with longer transport times, there could be some really big positive effects with it. So we'll see.
Yeah. I was really surprised when I heard that Tra was going to start carrying blood. Just one, because I remember we had always pushed hard for, RSI. We had pushed hard for a number of different drugs, and we were always told, no, you're too close to any given hospital. There's no reason for it. And then, a few months ago, a year ago, however long it was, they announced that they're carrying blood. And I'm like, what happened to we're too close to any given hospital? I mean, when I say too close, for those that are listening, I'm talking just about anywhere you go within the city, you're within 10 minutes to a hospital, maybe 20. So I just find that wild that they're carrying it. But it sounds like things are going pretty well. It
Yeah,
sounds like they've used it a handful of times.
yeah. So their medical director, Dr. Scott, is also our new medical director. So him and I have had a lot of conversations about it and all that. And yeah, they have had some really good benefits so far and outcomes with it. So the one downside is the cost is kind of cost prohibitive at times, especially for us being a county owned agency. We're a little bit more strapped for funding due to other departments in the county itself, the budget. So, we'll wait and see how that plays out for us. Then we'll kind of go down that route.
What kind of benefits do you see carrying blood is going to provide?
So for us, I mean, just being able to, with the crystalloids, we're not being able to perfuse well. We're not being able to, truly treat that bleeding like it should be. We do great with wound packing, using the hemostatic gauzes to take care of all that, getting the bleeding stopped. But really, I think with the blood for us, it's really going to help and be beneficial to getting that reperfusion, getting that resuscitation effort going for those significant trauma patients. And for us, we have 80, 90 and I-69 right through our county. Two very, very major thoroughfares in Northeast Indiana. A lot of our accidents that we deal with in significant trauma is coming from the toll road, 80, 90. And those patients are pretty significant when they do have an accident.
Yeah, that toll road is an absolute nightmare. So I would imagine you would have quite a bit of trauma on there. So so I'm not too familiar with what TRAS protocols are as far as the blood goes. Do you foresee that being an option for traumatic arrest calls? I know it's not part of the whole cardiac arrest procedure, but
procedure.
do you foresee
I
that?
haven't really dived too deep into the actual protocol that trials are using, but looking at the other studies that have been done, looking at the military side of it, yeah, I truly think resuscitating with blood is going to be kind of a standard in the near future, and especially for those traumatic arrests and helping that reperfusion going on because back in the day when we both first started this, it was pumped full of crystalloids and turn their blood into pasta water. Well, we've kind of find out that it's not beneficial at all. Next step is going to be,
Yeah.
let's use the blood. And men, if we look at studies and look at the military, how successful that is, sad to say the war in Ukraine has been very beneficial to a lot of progression forward with medical care, treatment, and actually the whole blood resuscitation in traumatic arrest and all that.
Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar, when it comes to EMS, the majority of the protocols and the standards that paramedics and EMTs follow usually are a result of what the military is already doing or has been doing for a while. Military is kind of like the guinea pig almost. They usually come up with these things because they have a lot more resources available and they're able to, I guess resources isn't the best word, but they have a lot more opportunities because they have a lot of trauma, obviously. So we tend to take the stuff that they have done and we kind of bring it to the EMS side of things. The whole traumatic arrest thing too, typically if somebody's going to traumatic arrest, they're losing volume somehow. Like they've either got an, internal bleeding or whatever. And like you said, when you start pumping them full of IV fluids and everything, all you're doing is turning it into pasta water and you're just making them bleed out faster.
Yep. There's only tourniquets and wound packing only do so much. If you don't have fluids, you're not gonna survive.
So how long have you been in EMS for?
Getting ready to turn 16 years.
16 years.
Yep. Yep.
Very
August
nice.
will be my 16th year into this.
What's kept you going through it? What's kept you in the field?
Helping people. A while back I had the burnout phase going for sure, but coming back to just deep down, one that drive to help people. Actually, when my daughter got diagnosed with cancer, that kind of rejuvenated me a little bit in EMS for the fact of I could take some of that knowledge I learned and help bring it into this side of the world because most paramedics, EMTs, they hate kids. They truly hate working on kids. For me, that was a turning point, share my knowledge. And then also just educating. I love to educate civilians and EMS individuals as well.
Just to clarify, EMTs and paramedics don't hate kids per se. They just, like you said, they hate working on
Working on them.
kids
Yep.
because there's just so many more things involved when it comes to a child, and not to mention then you've got the mental health aspect of it, especially if you're a parent. You run on a
Yep.
child and you're like, crap, that could have been my kid or whatever. And it's definitely tough. I totally agree with you. I hated running on kids just because of that fact. Oh, let's see. Um, so we'll just kind of jump in here. You own a company called MedTraining and Consulting. How did that come about? How did you decide to start that?
So that came about around 2018. At that point, there was a big push for CPR in the public sector, public private sector, a lot of community outreach stuff, but there wasn't a lot of stop the bleed at that point. Stop the bleed was a very new concept. And looking around our area, there wasn't really a good source of that coming out at the time. So through my years of EMS, then also going through multiple courses, tactical courses for EMS, tactical EMS courses, I kind of developed this little, I guess say favoritism towards that side of things a little bit. That kind of just drew me in. So then I just started developing my own Stop the Bleed course along with the Stop the Bleed Coalition. And we've kind of developed this course to what it is today. And the main goal was just to make civilians and first responders a little bit more self-reliant on education and then themselves when they're not working.
Yeah, it's strange looking back when I first started. There was this big fear of tourniquets.
Mhm.
Nobody wanted to use them. You were highly encouraged not to lose them unless somebody was going to die. And even then, you had to be very careful of keeping track of the time. There just wasn't a whole lot of information on tourniquets. There wasn't a lot of education on that.
Yeah, I'm the Boston bombing was kind of a turning point. I think for a lot of people, they realized the benefits of them. Um, for since then till just recently, there's a big push for tourniquets for everything. Now we're starting to teach again. Okay, we might not need a tourniquet for every situation. Wound pack pressure dressings might be more beneficial. And now we're starting to teach more of what we call a takedown process. Once a tourniquet is placed, okay, we got bleeding control. Now let's try to do some other things, wound pack pressure dressings to convert over so that we're not, completely having limb damage and all that, and maybe have some salvage ability of that limb or whatever.
Is it still the same as far as teaching goes where you apply pressure, elevate, do all that stuff first before you start jumping into those,
So
or
no,
what's the
pretty much it's
practice?
if you think it's a life threatening, direct pressure first, put a tourniquet on, either 2, 3 inches above the point of injury or high and tight, depending on the situation. Then start wound packing after that. If you're junctional areas, then you're going to do your wound pack pressure dressings.
I have only applied a tourniquet maybe a handful of times in my career. Unfortunately, the majority of the shootings that I went on, they were either BS or they were dead. So very rarely did we ever have. And then when it came to trauma, like motorcycle accidents or car accidents or whatever, obviously in Fort Wayne, there's not a whole lot of boats running around. So we didn't have, boat accidents or anything like that. But very rarely did we actually apply a tourniquet.
I think I've done more up in, working up in the more rural areas, the more the farming accidents, the boating accidents. We're in Steuben, the land of 100 lakes. So we have a lot of boating accidents. So yeah, so those type of situations, we do see more of those, and we do pretty, I wouldn't say we use them on a regular basis, but, a good handful every year for sure.
What's your go-to tourniquet?
Cat, Cat Gen 7.
Yeah, I see that they have not come out with a better version than that because I think that's been kind of the best one
Yeah,
for
that's
the
kind of the
last several
kind of
years.
the gold standard. Sam Medical just came out with a ratchet type windlass system that looks promising, but it's almost $50 a unit. So a little cost prohibitive for some departments and individuals that are supplying their own stuff.
Well, it would probably be great until that ratchet system fails, and then you're kind of screwed. So what else does your organization do?
So besides just the education side, then we also do we help with multi-sport events, so like triathlons. We provide medical coverage, BLS medical coverage for them. We go all over Northeast Indiana. Been linked up with a gentleman named Zach Rubel with Rubel Timing and Rubel Triathlon Sports. He's a coach. So for the last like 3 years, we've been going out to all his events and just providing BLS first aid to the participants if there wasn't medical emergency. We're right there. We have a staff of about 7 or 8 of us, mostly volunteers, that we just go out and help out.
Very nice. What's your everyday carry? What do you carry with you just on your days off? What are you bringing along?
For so my everyday carry for actually a firearm is going to be a Glock 4X. For medical wise, I actually carry a SWAT T tourniquet with a hemostatic gauze wrapped in it. Then mainly just my cell phone and keys. I'm one that doesn't carry a lot with them on an everyday carry.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't say that I carry a whole lot. If I am carrying something, I've got a Hellcat that I carry. I don't carry a tourniquet with me though. I probably should. I
I,
need to
I
be
I
better about
try to
that,
carry a I try to carry a full.
especially with everything that's going on around here.
Oh
Things
yeah,
are just getting nuts. So
yeah. I tried for a while to carry a cat tourniquet, but it was just too bulky. And for me being a little bit smaller guy, I was printing a lot of stuff, so I just didn't like that. So that's why I kind of switched to the SWAT T tourniquet. It's, just a big band, but I can use it as a pressure bandage or tourniquet depending on the situation.
Yeah, I've seen those bands before. It's like one of those resistant bands, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's like
Pretty
it's
similar.
like what you would use for physical therapy. It's about 3 or 4 inches wide. A lot better than the rat tourniquet, which is looks like a small tubular band that you wrap around multiple times.
Yes. Like the old school tourniquets that they used to use when they were drawing your blood.
Yep. Yep. I kind of call them the junkie tourniquets. You always see the junkies tied around their arms and kind of like that.
Yeah. Still used in every movie out there when it involves junkies or when it involves
Yep.
hospital scenes.
Yep.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody that finds themselves in a situation where they need a tourniquet and they don't have one? What should they look for to try to use?
What I always suggest is, use the direct pressure, use clothing if you have to, use the cotton t-shirts, use that kind of material to wound pack that. We always see in the movies, we always see on TV, they used to teach just use your belt. Problem with a belt is yeah, you get that first clamp down, you can get bleeding mostly stopped with that first pull of that belt, but there's truly no way to keep that belt in place. I have a lot of students in my classes that want to argue with me about this, depending on what's a leather belt, if it's a nylon tactical belt. But we found that there's no way to actually keep that pressure on there at all times. Um, so knowing how to wound pack properly with other items than traditional equipment is very beneficial, and that's what we actually teach. At part of our class is teaching is how to use those makeshift items to potentially treat and stop a bleed.
I would imagine those tactical belts are probably a little bit easier to use than a leather belt would be,
They are
at
they
least as far
are
as cinching down.
to cinch down a little bit, but like the ones that I use, my belt's from Feral Concept. It has a Cobra buckle, so there's no way to actually cinch it down that way. So depending on the belt, depending on what brand you're doing, there's a lot anymore. There's that whole belt loop thing is kind of gone.
Do you keep some sort of emergency kit in your vehicle, or do you have like an emergency preparedness in case doomsday happens and you have to go run and grab stuff?
Yeah, in my depending on what vehicle I have, like my truck, I have a lot of my shooting gear in my truck at all times. So plate carrier, all that stuff is in there. Especially if I need to use that for work, that's all ready to go for me. I just grab it and go. So in there, I do have my aid bag, which is pretty much a paramedic level aid bag I have in there with some other stuff we use for work that I can just transfer into our command vehicle and go with that. For everyday stuff, and for our events, I have a specific BLS bag, we'll say, that we use that's got the BVM, airway stuff, just the basic stuff that you need for the basic life support care. If we go more on the prepper side, I really don't have a whole lot of doomsday stuff. I kind of was looking into that for a while, but I've kind of got the mindset of if doomsday does happen, we're gonna mainly stay. I'm gonna bug in instead of bug out for the most part. Uh, Depending with my family where we live at in Northern Allen County, we have a little bit more area where we can control better, I think. And plus, I have all my radio equipment. I'm big into ham radios on the side, so we have a lot of that stuff here set up, ready to go. So I really don't want to leave that stuff and be behind the eight ball.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. How did you get into the ham radio?
So when I met my wife, her dad has been in big ham radios for a long time, and I was never really into it until about 3 or 4 years ago, and I really kind of saw the benefit of being able to communicate with other individuals throughout the world. So depending on what radio I have, I can use different radios that can actually communicate by radio wave around the world, or excuse me, by a digital wave through and using IP address and using internet. We can do communication that way as well. That way is very similar to what we use in EMS, fire and EMS currently with the P25 system. But I was just kind of never really into it. Then not one specific event made me like, oh, I need to do this. It was just kind of a gradual understanding of prepping and working with other teams and individuals like, hey, we will need to communicate if something were to go south.
Did you go through any of the classes on
Yeah.
ham radio?
Yeah. So I have my technician. I initially had my technician license. I got that during COVID, and did that all online. And then about a year later, I got my general license. I did that online as well, but then I also did a couple courses locally through one of the clubs up in Auburn. Then through my company, MedTraining Consulting, we do, it's not really a certified course, but we call it Introduction into Emergency Communications. We kind of explain the basics of how radios work and how they can help you in the different frequencies and different modes that radios that are out there for individuals to use.
Is it a requirement to get a certification to operate a ham radio?
It is. Yep. So technically, you need an FCC license. To use it on a daily basis, you need an FCC license. So they have a technician level, general, then an extra level. So there's 3 levels to it. Now, in emergency situations like the hurricanes in Tennessee and South Carolina this past year, during those situations, you don't need a license. You can actually just use those because that's considered a natural or you can use that in an emergency situation.
Are the classes, so you mentioned you took the technician level online. Are you able to take all the classes online, or is there a hands-on portion that you should
So
be present for?
you can do both. They do have an online self-study course you can do, but I recommend I work a lot with the Auburn, Indiana club. A lot of great guys. They offer classes every couple of months, just one night a week, and they just really help you through the theories and how everything works. The federal test is kind of challenging because you need to know the electronic side of how radio works, but then also the radio theories and all that. So having someone who has been experienced with that and kind of works in that field really helps you understand a little bit better than just doing your own self-study test.
How long does that program usually take?
It's I think their course is like 2 months maybe. So like 8 weeks, you think, right around 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks.
Is that like a once or twice a week, or
They usually meet once a week on I think Tuesdays.
what what was the first radio you used?
So my first radio I used was a small what we call Baofeng. It's a little cheap Chinese radio, $25. Really, now we call them throwaway radios. But that's just something really inexpensive that I used to get on into it, and that's why I suggest most people who are getting into this who want to have sense of some sense of security and communication. And actually, here's one right here. So just a little cheap plastic Baofeng radio, $25. They work really well for just someone who's getting into it.
I don't know much about, I mean, I knew enough to get me in trouble with the radios we used in fire and EMS, but when it comes to ham radios, that's a whole nother world
It's a
for
whole
me.
other world, and honestly, it actually a lot of it does cross over to each other. I'm one of our radio guys for Stu Ben, just because of my background in with the amateur side. It really does translate over to the fire and EMS side in the public sector of it because the whole system is very similar. It's based off of amateur radios.
What kind of radio frequency? I mean, I know you got 700, your 800 megahertz, you got VHF, UHF. What primarily is it for?
So ham radios, they have a huge band. So they go from what we call high frequency, which is like 30 megahertz, all the way up to 900 megahertz. So just above what we use for fire and EMS. So fire and EMS, we use the 800 megahertz system. So we have a wide, depending on what level of technician license you have, kind of gauges where you can be at. For me, with me being a general, I usually play in the 40 to 20 meter band. And then also for when we're doing events and all that, we play in the UHF VHF, which is the 440 megahertz for UHF, and for VHF it's like the 440 or the 149 area.
Think out west, the fire departments still primarily use UHF, unless
So out west, are you talking like out like
maybe they
Montana,
switched.
big mountain area?
Yeah, like out in the mountain
Yeah,
areas.
so they're still using VHF, um, the 150 megahertz range. That's able to get a longer distance. In our area, with us being 800 system, we rely a lot on the repeaters to take that signal and repeat it and go around the area. Out there in more rural area, you have larger gaps between towers and all that, so you need a larger signal to travel. So the 800 megahertz system would not be beneficial for that type of situation.
Wasn't there a big push for 900 megahertz there for a minute?
There was, but the problem with 900 is even your point to point or um, distance is like a mile at most. So it's a very small wavelength that can penetrate concrete, can penetrate steel really well, but it just has a very short wavelength, and you need a lot more towers and repeaters to get that thing to go around. So it wasn't beneficial.
Interesting. I guess I would have thought the higher you went, the less repeaters you would need.
It's so 800 megahertz, 900 megahertz is almost like a cell phone wavelength. So cell phones run off of 5G, 4 and 5G service. They use towers to repeat that. It's the same thing as radio, because a cell phone is really nothing more than a handheld radio. If you want to get down the nitty gritty of it.
Do you ever carry a radio around with you other than fire when you're doing EMS? Do you ever carry one
So
with you?
so in my vehicle, in my truck, I have a mobile radio built into my truck. So I have that, but I don't carry it on a day-to-day basis. Carry a radio now.
Didn't you have an issue with your HOA
I did.
and
I did.
the
Yeah.
tower?
Yeah. So a few years ago for my bigger radios, my HF radios or high frequency radios, those require some type of larger antenna. So I had a 20-foot vertical antenna in my yard. HOA didn't like it because it was against their regulations. It got into a real sticky situation. I did some other things, put a wire antenna up instead. So we kind of skirted that issue. But yeah, that was like a year and a half battle. Um, I was facing and got pretty stupid on my HOA's part, um, to the point of where I was getting lawyers involved and all that, and they finally backed off once we came to an agreement of what we were going to do.
The concern was also that you're protected by federal law to have that, aren't you?
Yeah, so there is, by federal law, I'm able to have that with my license and everything. The one downside of it is, and this is actually getting reversed now, at the federal level. They said at the time HOAs, when you sign up, when you go to live in an HOA and you pay your HOA dues, the dues themselves kind of take away some of your rights, they say. So that's where that was coming in as the covenant said I couldn't have a large TV antenna. There was nothing ever said anything about a radio antenna or anything like that, but they were trying to put it in this whole TV dish antenna realm. So it got real messy, got clouded, and it turned into a lot of nonsense.
It's one of the many reasons why I do not live in a neighborhood anymore.
Yep. Yep. That's why I'm looking for land and get my own area here in the near future.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's nice, man. I tell you, we moved out to we were living out on the west side of the county there for a while, and that was nice. In fact, we would have stayed there, but my in-laws offered us some property, and we decided to build. And if they wouldn't have offered us property, we would have stayed there, just because the cost of building is awful,
Oh,
especially right now
it's
after COVID.
especially land. If you're buying straight up land right now too, 35, $40,000 an acre. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's if you're lucky, because there are some counties within Indiana, Allen County included, that you might be paying even more than
Oh, yeah.
that for just an acre of land. So, what else you do for fun? What's what's a big hobby of yours other than the ham radios?
Yeah. So, for a while now, I mean, you can probably see the bike back here. I did a lot of cycling for many, many years. Once I had the kids, that kind of has dwindled down to very minimal now. But for a major part of my life, I was cycling, had my own team, was one of the major teams in Northeast Indiana for the amateur cycling. That was a huge part of my life, and really enjoyed that. But again, stupid expensive.
You and Cody have something coming up, don't you?
We were supposed, and actually today, the Four for Fitness thing was today.
What was
So
it?
he was trying to get me to do that last year and all that, and I just didn't have the time. Eric Fetcho with First Due Communication, we all kind of started cycling. Eric and I started cycling together 10, 15 years ago and slowly kind of continued. But Yeah, I want to get back and do it at some point, a lot heavier than I am currently again.
I mean, you could just blame Cody and say it was Cody's fault that it didn't happen.
Yeah, there you go.
We pick on him enough on this show,
I
so
I
it's
know.
perfectly
See,
fine.
I got him actually into cycling and all that, and got him helping with his new bike and all that. So he can blame me for that part of it, but yeah,
Yeah, he when he told me how much money he was dropping on that new bike, I was like, dude, you could have bought one with a motor for that price.
his was cheap.
Really?
So that the black one right here, this was one of race bikes. That was like $13,000.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'll stick with the bike at my gym.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
I only
That's why
pay
it's
30
still
bucks a month for that.
yeah. That's why it still sits there. I don't. You know, it's nice to have. I'll never get rid of it. But yeah, that was expensive. Little purchase back in the day.
So we'll kind of start wrapping things up here a little bit, but let's shift focus just a little bit onto newer EMTs, newer paramedics. What kind of advice would you give somebody who's maybe interested in getting into the field? Maybe they're brand new, they've already got their certs and they want to perfect their skills and maybe try to move up the ladder.
What I always tell them, try to get hired somewhere. We have a lot of great volunteer services around here, fire services around here. Get on board with one of them. Get to know your local EMTs and paramedics. All too often, people come into this line of work um, kind of hot headed at times. The newer EMTs thinking that they're God's gift of EMTs coming right from school and all that. So get to know what you're getting into first. Know your limits. Stay in your lane and learn. The old senior medics might be salty, might be grouchy at times, but learn from them. I guarantee you, they will always want to learn. They'll always want to teach the new upcoming generation. We have to show that you're willing to learn.
It's some good points there, and I have noticed as well that a lot of these newer EMTs and even newer paramedics, like you said, they sometimes they come out of the gate and they think they know everything already. We used to have a saying when I was the EMS captain at my fire department. I used to tell people all the time, all right, you finished your fire 1 and 2 class or you finished your EMT class. Now we're going to teach you how it really works because that's when the learning really
Yep.
starts.
You
You've
know,
learned the book work. You've learned what the state wants you to know. You've learned what National Registry wants you to know. Now we're going to show you how it really works
yeah,
because
you'll learn
this is hands-on.
the street side of it because that's a whole nother learning process.
Yep, you can be book smart all day long, but if you don't have the street smarts and you don't have the skill, you're not going to be
No.
worth a damn.
And the big thing that I see too is these newer generation kids, I think it's part of how they're brought up with technology. They don't know how to communicate with patients. That's their biggest struggle is communication with patients and knowing how to hold a conversation, how to distinguish what the patient's trying to actually tell them, body language and everything. They don't know how to do that. And it's a struggle.
I will say I have noticed the newest generation, while yes, I agree that communication is definitely difficult, there's also that flip side where they they don't get offended very easily. And what I mean by that is like, so at my previous job when I was a manager and I had to have quote unquote tough conversations, it's only tough if you make it tough, but had to have these tough conversations with employees. You could sit there and you could read off a list of things that they're doing wrong. It doesn't phase them.
Mm,
Like they just look at you and they're like, okay, and that's it. And I think that's awesome. That's a great skill to have because one, if you want to improve, you can't get offended when somebody's giving you criticism. So hopefully they're using that to their advantage.
yeah, I agree there.
Well, Andy, you got any other last minute thoughts before we wrap things up? It's
I
kind of a
don't.
short
I
one
mean,
today.
again, I think the newer EMTs and paramedics. I think it's always a learning curve. So we're in this together. We're a big family, dysfunctional family. I always say. So just hang in there and keep going forward. And at the end of the day, we're thinking about patients. That's our number one goal is taking care of the patients.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Andy, for joining me.
No
Greatly
problem.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.